Olá, o próximo painel, o áudio original será em inglês. Lembrando que temos a tradução simultânea através do link que está aqui na tela. So let me switch to English now. This next panel we will talk about the future of energy. To moderate this panel, we invite Vittorio Perona, partner of BTG Pactual, to interview Catherine MacGregor.
Catherine MacGregor is CEO of Engie, French private group, first independent power producer in the world, and first producer of onshore wind and solar power in France. Present in Brazil for 25 years, the group operates in power generation, transmission and commercialization, gas transportation services and engineering, being the largest private power producer in the country. Catherine took over the position in January 2021. Good afternoon, Catherine, and welcome to our event.
Hi, Catherine.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me well.
We can hear you very well, Catherine, and again, thank you very much for your availability. It's a pleasure to see you again. I was thinking of starting by saying that when we were discussing what the panels should look like for this conference, we immediately came to the conclusion that the future of energy should be one of the keynote topics of the event, given the relevance of energy in terms of economic development, in terms of the environment, and so on. And so when we came to the conclusion, we immediately thought of you, because for three reasons, really. First, because you yourself have a fantastic track record in the energy sector, in various areas of the energy sector. Secondly, because you run a company which is very much at the forefront of energy innovation and energy transition globally. And third, because at the end of the day, this is an event which is aimed, amongst other things, at investors that want to invest in Brazil. And of course, Engie has been a leader in the Brazilian energy sector now for more than 20 years. You've been the number one private sector generator for 20 years in a row. Also, you've made other investments, such as notably, amongst others, the investment in TAG, turning you into a major midstream player in the country. So these were the three reasons. But then we were also lucky because it just turned out to be, and this was not by planning, that last week you had published a strategic update. And so we thought it would be a great opportunity for investors that look at Brazil to hear firsthand from you about your strategic update that, again, we just very few days ago announced to the public. And because of that, we thought it may be useful to ask you, if you could, to share with us a few slides from the strategic update, and then we can take it from there, because the strategic update, of course, talks a lot about energy transition and some of the things that your company is actually doing in relation to that. So over to you, and again, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us.
Well, many thanks for the kind words and the nice introduction. And this opportunity, I also want to share with you indeed an extract of what we shared with the market last week. Obviously, it's quite general. It really covers a bit a high-level view at Engie of how to take opportunities of the significant positive momentum we see in the energy sector. And then, of course, during the questions, Vittorio, we can narrow it down a little bit more onto Brazil for sure. So let me maybe start as I'm my first slide to indeed highlight that we are facing this very buoyant and transforming energy sector. We feel that we are at this incredible moment in the energy world where we're entering a new growth cycle, and this growth cycle is driven by this increasing climate commitment that we see spanning companies, spanning cities, communities, and states, and even continents even. So these climate commitments obviously are driving and initiating this new growth cycle. At the same time, of course, a robust energy demand, which when you combine both of them means electrification as a major macro trend. And that translates into a renewable development, which is booming. So we are expecting that we need about 3 times over the next 20 years renewable capacity globally, which means that we need to add more than 7,000 gigawatts during these next 2 decades. 7,000 gigawatts, it's like you need 7,000 new nuclear reactor, Vittorio, so it's a lot. And at the same time, you have events like what happened in Texas at the beginning of the year, which highlights very acutely the need for security, for reliability, but also for affordability of the energy supply. And this is something, that I keep talking about, because sometimes we make scenarios and we forget that actually the outcome of our energy system needs to be reliable, needs to have the flexibility when unplanned events happen, and need to remain affordable to our society. Really, really, really important. And we see, obviously, many governments prioritizing the climate actions as we come out of COVID crisis. Recovery plans have strong climate requests, actions, commitments, and obviously this even amplifies further the momentum and the concept of energy system of the future, where we see, obviously, hydrogen play potentially a very, very important role. I would add the fact that a lot of cities, a lot of corporates have joined that Race to Net Zero initiative, which turns into significant requirements in terms of offers and solutions that we can bring. And I will talk a little bit later about the concept of distributed energy infrastructure, which is very fantastic opportunity for us at Engie. So what I've announced last week is that we have set up a clear roadmap for the long-term value creation at Engie, with really five key points. The first point is that in order for us to seize these tremendous opportunities that we have and must seize, we have lots of unique strengths at Engie. We are strongly positioned. We have a solid asset portfolio. We have asset portfolio in renewable, in hydro, in gas. We have hugely competent, engaged teams, but we do have to make some transformation. We have to transform to seize the opportunities. We are very, very committed to embrace our role of leader of the energy transition. And to do that, we need to move to become a bit simpler, to focus and have a stronger industrial approach, and we can discuss that in the Q&A if you want. We have these complementary businesses aligned to industry mega trends, but for that we have to set ourselves as a simpler, more industrial Engie. We are making strong commitment to net zero and in general ESG performance. We are setting up a new organization with strong accountability, strong performance focus, and we're driving growth in 2 key domains, renewables and infrastructure, and specifically in infrastructure, the distributed infrastructure with disciplined capital allocation. And by doing all this, we feel that we have this unique position to enable the energy system of the future, which will have that affordability, that security, that reliability characteristics that I've talked about. We have made this strong net zero commitment by 2045 across all scopes. And when you look at this commitment, both in terms of calendar and also in terms of size or type of scopes, indeed, we feel that we are quite advanced, at least compared to most of our peers' carbon ambition. Of course, we have to translate these commitments. They are not just net zeros that we throw away to 2045. We have intermediate milestones, both on the carbon intensity of our energy production on one side. On the other side is around the sold product, and we have a path to net zero on both of these metrics. We have also announced a robust coal exit plan by 2027. We have a line of sight to reduce the carbon intensity of our power generation, as well as the emissions that are linked to the use of the sold products. And we are, of course, aligning future CapEx. So this is a whole adjustment of our capital allocation, where, of course, we look at CapEx, we look at returns, and of course, we now set ourselves carbon budgets by business unit to make sure that we are going to meet the targets that we are committing to. And of course, incentive of top management is aligned, obviously, on these carbon objectives, which are very important. So I have introduced the simpler Engie, what it looks like, very simple indeed, with 4 global business units, which will be strengthened in terms of industrial capability. Each of them, by the way, playing a very important role to contribute to this reliable, affordable, and sustainable energy transition. We have a renewable global business unit, obviously generating clean power, so really at the heart of the energy transition. We have the energy solutions, which develops the low carbon distributed energy infrastructure, which is going to be critical in cities and dense communities. We have our networks business. Obviously, you mentioned, Vittorio, the TAG assets, which falls under this global business unit, which is really important to deliver the affordable energy for our customers, and our thermal, which offers the flexibility to balance renewable intermittency. And I will talk a little bit about this as I zoom onto our European challenge in terms of energy systems later on. And so these 4 global business units, they have very much infra-like business models, largely contracted earnings, complementary profiles. At the same time, they have their own particularities. And to simplify, I would say that renewables and energy solutions, so the 2 at the top, have strong growth profiles, while networks and thermal and supply, they provide stability and, of course, strong free cash flow generation, which is important as we want to grow the other 2. A little bit of a zoom onto our renewable portfolio, which we are very proud of. Today, in 2020, we are operating around 31 gigawatts. You were kind enough to highlight our strengths in France. For example, we also have obviously strong assets in Brazil. We have strong hydro assets as well. What we're planning to do is to grow from 31 gigawatt to 50 to 2025 and 80 gigawatts to 2030. And the mix of technology you can see with the color. And you can see that particularly we will grow on onshore wind, solar, and to a lesser extent on offshore wind. And we like to throw this 3, 4, 6, which is our average annual wind and solar commissioning. So today we have that pace of 3 gigawatts a year, and we will move to 4 gigawatt. And then soon after 2025, we will move this up to 6 gigawatts. So strong ambition and in renewables. We have a track record, and this is obviously very critical from the energy transition standpoint. And I would say also that last week we spent some time to discuss our pipeline to support these growth targets, to show that we have line of sight on how we are going to be delivering on this ambitious target, a pipeline which is around 56 gigawatt as of today. Then I will just zoom in onto our other kind of growth engine, which is the energy solutions. And energy solutions is all around distributed energy infrastructure. So think district heating and cooling, think on-site utilities, distributed solar, as well as low carbon mobility. So here, the business model it's a little bit like infrastructure. So you tend to have long-term contracts and then stable and recurring revenues, as well as long-term contracted cash flow. So it's quite an interesting business model. We have grown over time, clear competitive advantages. First of all, in, for example, some of our district cooling, we are number 1, district heating, we are number 3 worldwide. So we have strong position. And we are really a pioneer in this integrated decarbonization project, where we work very closely with our industrial customers or our cities, which are then become our customers. And we work with them designing infrastructure which we're going to serve, to heat or to cool or to give energy to our clients with as low a carbon footprint as possible. And of course, we provide the investment capability, often bringing in partners, and then we use that as a future development platform. So very interesting business, and of course leveraging relationship with the local players, the key, what we call the energy transition promoters, or be it cities, or be it communities, sometimes even universities, and sometimes industrial partners, which have made those commitments of carbon neutrality and don't necessarily know how they are going to reach this target. So then we feel that we have a very big role to play. So we have set an ambition in that domain as well to increase the distributed energy infrastructure ambition to 2025, and you see the split there. Maybe a word here to say that we have also deployed a methodology to count the number of CO2 equivalent tons that we avoid for our clients, because the use of our services and solutions in this domain is directly related to reduction of carbon emission for our customers, and we have a method to track that. Obviously, we don't double count it towards our net zero objective, but we do provide our customers a way to demonstrate their own CO2 emission avoidance, and this shows really strong alignment between our goal, our services, and also what our clients are trying to do. So it's a really nice methodology indeed. An example of this service, because sometimes people are not quite familiar with these types of services. A few weeks ago, we signed an agreement in Singapore to develop, build, own, and operate a district cooling system for a brand new digital district of Singapore. So this is where we invest and we build an infrastructure which is typically underground and which allows to cool in a very, very effective manner a whole new district in a very carbon and energy efficient way. And so we have this initial investment, and of course, when we have new customers, new buildings, then we use this infrastructure which is pre-installed, and then we can continue to develop with on-site PV, green mobility, with this type of business model. So a good and virtuous business from many standpoints. I will now then say a word on gas. Gas is, in our mind, very important in the energy transition, and specifically because it supports the energy transition's affordability. Really important, as if we were to imagine a world where to reach net zero, we would only go through electrification, we will have a additional cost brought to the energy system, which we feel is going to be unbearable for the citizen. And so we promote the view that the energy transition will have to rely on a certain role for gas to make sure that we keep the whole energy system balanced from a security of supply as well as from an affordability standpoint. So we do have line of sight, of course, to help decarbonize the gas. And so if you look on the right-hand side, this is a market slide. So this is not just Engie numbers, but we are envisaging, at least in Europe, a very significant renewable gas demand increase, as shown on the graph. First met by biogas and biomethane, which has the benefit of being able to use existing infrastructure, because biomethane is the same molecule as natural gas, so CH4. So you can use existing infrastructure, so you can envisage a more rapid development. But then, of course, hydrogen becoming a significant contributor to the decarbonization of the mix. Being a gas, gas actors will obviously be very important, having an important role to play in the deployment of hydrogen as a market. But so all in all, we expect gas to continue to be an important part of the mix. In fact, around 25% in the primary energy mix over the period 2020 to 25. And of course, as gas is important in Brazil, we see that indeed quite compatible to that. So in Europe, and I'm sorry if I'm a little bit European-centric in my slide, but this whole hydrogen emergence is really interesting, where we envisage first that the market will start as regional hub. So you will have, the production of green or renewable or low carbon hydrogen very close to industrial hub, where you would be consuming the hydrogen. But then eventually, as the hydrogen market grows, there will be the need for the production of hydrogen where renewable electricity is available in abundance and in a very cheap manner. And that might not be where the consumption will happen. So the view is that eventually in Europe, you will have this deployment or this development of the hydrogen backbone, which is symbolized with this graph on the right-hand side, which will require indeed, from an infrastructure, connecting pipe as well as storage capability, which, we obviously feel we are well placed at Engie, particularly given we have such an important gas network in France specifically. So in terms of hydrogen, I've talked a little bit about the network aspect, but Engie is also very ambitious in terms of production as well as mobility. So our whole message last week to the market on hydrogen was that, all of our businesses will potentially benefit from a hydrogen market. So we are also very relevant in terms of production, where our ability to integrate very large, complex projects is very relevant. So even though we don't see ourselves as manufacturing the electrolyzer, we envisage a world where we would be producing to 2030 about 4 gigawatts. We have obviously a more modest target at 2025 of 600 megawatts, but we do have a very strong pipeline of projects, about 70 projects, which are indicated on the left, for production of green hydrogen. So on the production, we would be very focused on green hydrogen. And then, of course, the midstream, which I've talked about. And then in terms of mobility, where we feel that hydrogen would be an interesting solution, particularly on the heavy-duty side, we would be relevant in terms of infrastructure and then operating the infrastructure of refueling. And so we have set ourselves some targets on number of refueling stations. I will say a few words on digital, where we have capability across the value chain. We have actually deep expertise at Engie, digital and data, particularly when you look at the number of data specialists. We have 2,000 of them, 350 data scientists, 1,000 developers who are building our own digital platforms, bringing together very strong métier expertise and digital, which gives us some differentiation in terms of tools. Nemo is an interesting one, where we are able to simulate, design, and operate our district heating and cooling networks. So by using the science that we've developed over years of expertise of our networks, we are able to model very, very well, with great level of granularity, the efficiency and how to operate those networks. So we bring efficiencies, and this allows us obviously to bring some hefty commitments in terms of energy efficiency gains for our customers, backed up by obviously the digital tools. So we have a lot of differentiation and tools, and we'll continue to work on improving our competitiveness, particularly on the deployment. And if I was to make maybe a link to our organization, our organization will be tasked to indeed make sure that we deploy our data and digital tools in a faster manner to really report the benefits of these tools. So putting our strategy into actions, just a summary of our key operational targets. Net zero by 2045 on 3 scopes, stepping up renewable growth 3 to 4 to 6, distributing infrastructure, adding 8 gigawatt by 2025, and then reaching 4 gigawatt of green hydrogen production by 2030. So that's some of the key targets that we've announced to the market last week. And just to conclude the presentation, and then looking forward to this discussion, Just to remind that we are an energy utility, very focused on renewable and infrastructure. By doing that, we support our customers' decarbonization, and we are building today the low carbon energy system of tomorrow with, electricity meets gas, very strong positioning in hydrogen. So on this, Vittorio, I'll stop here. I hope I was not too long talking about my strategy update, and then very happy to take the questions that you might have. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Catherine, and very enlightening. I had the opportunity to look at the presentation on my computer, but obviously there is nothing like hearing it directly from you. So the first question is that you've been very clear about your ambitions globally for the Engie Group, and obviously we have seen Engie Brazil implementing some of the things that you discussed. But given all the sort of novelty that you brought, all this discussion on hydrogen, for instance, and many other things, what other things that you have announced and that you're doing starting in France will be rolled out in Brazil specifically?
Yes, no, thank you for the question. I think you've highlighted the fact that, we have, Brazil is one of the few absolutely key countries for us at Engie. During my talk, maybe I didn't mention, but we have, in terms of simplification, we have this priority or this momentum at Engie now that started a couple of years ago to reduce our geographical footprint from 70 countries in 2018 to 30 by 2023. So it's quite a strong momentum of reducing our footprint. But of course, Brazil is it in terms of priorities. Whenever we talk about each of our business, we have Brazil as one of our top places. So very, very pleased, we've been there for 25 years. We have about 3,000 employees. Our turnover revenue was 13.3 billion in 2020, Brazil real. So very, very strong position. And in fact, when I look at what we're trying to do at Engie, and I look at that capability and the capacity in Brazil, we have a large installed power of just over 10 gigawatts in terms of power plants. So we have about 72 power plants. And that represents about 6% of the country capacity. We have 90% of that actually is coming from renewable source or low carbon emission, 90% of that. So when I look at my footprint in Brazil, it's almost like this model of Engie that I would like to have more. Of course, a lot of it is indeed from hydro. We have strong hydro assets in Brazil, but we have also some wind power plants, and we continue to invest in power plants. So growing our renewable businesses, that's very much what we want to do in Brazil. We are also talked about in our strategy about rebalancing, our network presence. Our network presence is very, very strong in France, as you know. And so rebalancing our presence from being very, very French focused to a bit more internationally. And so Brazil is the place where we are doing this, actually. So we have done that, with our significant investment in TAG on the gas side. But we are also involved, in the construction of power transmission in Brazil as well. So when I look at Brazil, it's a perfect, showcase of Engie in the country, with decarbonizing very much our power production, which is almost completely done. Growth in renewable, strong business in infrastructure, which is really, really important, with the rebalancing, gas, electricity, which is also happening as we speak. And maybe just to conclude, because I didn't, when I go through all my global business unit, and I imagine them and I see them working in Brazil. Of course, our business in energy solution has also promising outlook in Brazil, which is around all the distributed infrastructure, green mobility, where we feel we have also opportunities. And public lighting, for example, where we can bring energy efficiency solutions to cities is an example of the type of solutions that we can bring to the Brazil. So very, very excited about, making this strategy into action for Brazil as well. I have to say, the competency of our people. I went to Brazil early January, and it was a short trip because we had obviously all the constraint that for traveling. But it was a pleasure, and such a pleasure to meet our teams, which are extremely competent and very, very engaged, well motivated, super focused on what we're trying to do, which is energy transition. At the same time, making sure we have. We are performing as an organization, so really good alignment there.
Excellent, thank you very much. Well, let me pick up on one of the topics you just raised, which is the topic of TAG. Obviously, you made the acquisition there, and as you know, we had the recent approval of a new gas law in Brazil, which is designed really to enhance, to accelerate the opening of the gas market. So the question that I think a lot of our clients are asking themselves, what are your plans for the gas sector in Brazil? Are you planning to stay focused on the infrastructure on the midstream side, or are you also planning to shift along the gas value chain? Are there any sort of short-term opportunities that you have in mind in relation to that?
Yeah, so maybe just in general, I'll just say a few words on the fact that obviously we are optimistic about the future of the gas market in Brazil. We are obviously welcoming the new gas law as a positive, very positive development. So that's for sure. Then obviously with a very strong TAG assets, which we have acquired. Mid 2019 indeed, and since then we've multiplied by 5 investment in the transportation network. So we are actively investing in our TAG assets, which we like very much. We're very, very pleased, and we have over the next 5 years an investment plan of about 1.5 billion Brazil real, so about 300 million a year. Pretty much a third of that is in the expansion of the networks. And we are very pleased because we've signed our first contract for gas transportation with a new client for industrial application, fertilizing plants. So, we're starting to see the market opening. And of course, we're very positive. We look forward to that. And I say, in terms of the role of the gas, there is still coal in Brazil, so the role of gas, increasing with the coal decreasing, obviously positive impact on the environment and in terms of carbon emission. This is another consideration to keep in mind. And then, of course, we'll be looking forward to further evolution in gas, whether on biogas, biomethane, and hydrogen. And if we can play a role, of course, we will be looking forward to that in line with what I've just said at the global Engie level.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for that. And again, picking up on a point you made earlier about decarbonization. Obviously, we have seen the announcement in Chile, where you decided to close your coal plants. How do you combine decarbonization plans that you have clearly stated and declared with obviously the need to provide profitability for your shareholders? So are there sort of good alternatives to that, maybe direct disposals, things like a conversion of plants? What are your plans for decarbonization in Brazil, in other words?
Yeah, so look, I think it's a really critical topic. The way I've shown our 4 global business units, as strong industrial activity. At the end of the day, at the level of a country, we need to make sure that everything works as a system. And the way, on the Chile example, there is really a system approach, which I will always try and promote, because it's so important to make sure we respect, when we plan to decarbonize, we look at all aspects, all of the consequences, from an economic, from a social, from an environmental impact, from an industrial impact, from a shareholder return impact, from a feasibility point of view. All of these aspects have to be taken into consideration as a system. And I think, the example of Chile is quite interesting because it shows that you're moving from one system where you have about 60% of coal to another system where you have about 60% of renewable. And you've actually increased the overall capacity of that system. So you've added gigawatts and you've completely changed the profile in terms of carbon footprint of that system. So it's quite powerful, but it can only work with, very strong collaboration between the different stakeholders, very strong understanding of what these local constraints are, what is the reality, what are the social implications, the calendar. This has to work as a really strong collaboration. Of course, regulation, all these needs to line up, right, for these things to happen. So it's very difficult to do decarbonization in isolation. You can't decide overnight, okay, I'm going to shut down a plant that employs people and makes people leave. And we will always be very, very careful about the consequences. So what we said, from if I just take my carbon emissions hat on, of course, coal plants, we would prefer to close if we can find solutions to convert to biomass, which has to be obviously carefully sourced, or gas. That can be also a very acceptable solution from this multiple set of constraints standpoint. And then sometimes there is no such solution, and then we will be looking at a disposal. But of course, we would be making sure that we do that in a very considerate manner always. So that's really the way we think about this decarbonation directions, if you like, is really as a system in a collaborative manner, looking at all the constraints and indeed, being part of the solution, because that's, the only way we can be a responsible energy actor in any country we operate.
No, thank you for that. Actually, allow me to dwell a little bit more on this very same topic, but maybe taking sort of a big picture look at it. Do you see this trend? Not even a trend, it's really a kind of a route that is already firmly sort of set towards decarbonization as a necessity or as a movement that corporates like yourselves need to take in order to meet demands from different stakeholders? Or do you think this is a business in its own right?
And I think to be honest, I think it's a bit of all of the above. And maybe I would add that there is also, to what you said, there is also this internal momentum that is pushing us also towards that direction. So it's really quite extraordinary because it's really I don't know what image we should use, but it's really a wave. It's almost unstoppable. And it comes from all this range of stakeholders, including our employees, which are really a strong driver of that. In the case of Engie, and this is my pet topic because I'm so passionate about this, is that we have this incredible alignment. At Engie we have this purpose, which is in our bylaws now, which is that we have a purpose, and which is to help accelerate the energy transition to a carbon neutral world. And that purpose is something that our employees are very, very, very passionate about, and they are challenging us. Are you guys going fast enough? So it's a very fundamental to who Engie is now. So that's one thing. The second thing is the where we are so lucky at Engie is that this is actually well aligned with where our clients want to go. So there is this beautiful alignment of what our people want, what we are set to do, and what the market wants us to do. So when you have such a strong alignment, frankly, you are in a pretty good position. Yeah. Now, that doesn't mean, don't get me wrong, I mean, that doesn't mean that we don't have to make some choices. So, for example, when we have this 2045 carbon neutrality ambition, for some of our global business units, like the thermal one, of course, we have to make choices. Coal exit is one of them. And it's not always easy to stop, ongoing operation. It's never easy decision. So I'm not saying it's necessarily always easy, but I have to say there is this macro trends which generating business for which Engie is really, really well aligned. So your question had also behind it, the question on return and profitability. And today, I mean, clearly we have line of sight for good returns from our project on renewables, on energy solutions. So then, you have this really nice situation where you have good businesses and you're going towards decarbonization. So a good position to be in indeed.
Excellent. Actually, a question I had, because in Brazil, you're more of a B2B business today, right? Given the nature of your activity at this moment, you're mostly a B2B activity, although with the opening of the electricity and gas sector, you will have access also to B2C opportunities if you want to. But obviously in France, you're a very, very significant player also in B2C. So a question I had, in your opinion, clients, be it sort of B2B clients or B2C clients, are they willing to pay a higher price for cleaner energy? What is your, I presume you have market research on that. What is your impression of, again, because everybody wants clean energy. I don't know anybody who doesn't want clean energy, but are people willing to pay more for the benefit of clean energy?
Look, I think your point is really important, and I keep hammering this affordability. I think people want both. People the way I see it in Western Europe, society they don't want to go back on this energy transition story. Okay. I think it's there. They are very demanding. They want change. They want cleaner energy, and at the same time they want it affordable. Yes. So it's going to be a bit of the paradox for industries, but also for government, frankly. Not an easy one to navigate. And by the way, this is why I insist on the role of gas, because I do think that, its ability to be stored, its ability to be dispatched quickly to absorb the peak is going to be an element of moderation in terms of price of the energy during this transition. So I think that's really, really, really important. I would say on the B2B side, obviously a lot of our customers have made these commitments, and they do understand that these commitments will have some sort of cost associated to them. So obviously they look at it very, very carefully, and they're going to be demanding, etc. And there is competition. But the green PPAs, or the green electricity package that we are able to provide to our customers are viewed as very important for them to reach their goal of decarbonization, right? So and that has value to them. So they do value that. So I'd say B2B and B2C is a little bit of a different behaviors for obvious reasons. But I'd say for the consumers, we're going to have to be watching the affordability very, very, very carefully.
Excellent. Thank you for your insights. Another question I had, obviously, as you know, in Brazil, Brazil was born with very significant natural endowments in the forms of hydro resources. Some of the windiest locations in the world for the construction of wind farms, obviously solar as well. But also we were watching very carefully what is happening in Europe in terms of green hydrogen. Just wanted to ask you, what is your view as to the potential for green hydrogen in Brazil? I know it's it's a very early stage topic in the country, but we were wondering about your views on it.
Yeah, I mean, with the availability of low carbon green electricity or green energy production in Brazil, your potential is, I would say, I mean, it's absolutely massive. The whole, I mean, the two key drivers are for cost drivers for green hydrogen is the cost of renewable electricity and then the cost of electrolyzers. So these are the two things that one has to really focus on from a green hydrogen cost competitivity point of view. And so obviously on the electricity side, renewable, as you pointed out, you have incredible resources that I can remember having visited the control center of one of the wind farm we are operating in Brazil, and I asked the person, how do you shut off your wind farm? Because in Europe you have a lot of time where you have to shut down your wind farm for XYZ reason. And he looked at me and said, well, we never switch them off because they are always on and they are producing so much electricity. So very, very strong resources. Which is going to provide very, very good resources. Now, on the electrolyzers, Brazil will benefit obviously from the whole industrial effort that is happening worldwide. So I think the potential is there. I think the whole key for green hydrogen for Brazil, for any country, for Brazil specifically, is going to be to define and to prioritize the usage, and then to make sure that the government packages, however they are designed, they focus on these priorities of usage. Typically, you would focus your green hydrogen onto what we call hard to abate sectors. The sectors that are really emitting loads of carbon and are not easy to green, if you like. Then green hydrogen often can be a good solution for that. And then in terms of heavy duty mobility, as well, for light mobility, probably a EV electrical solution would be the answer. But for heavy duty, just in terms of the cost and the size of the batteries, then hydrogen could be a very, very interesting alternative. But between a fully green hydrogen electricity and what you have now, of course, expansion of gas usage is a very good way to think about energy transition in Brazil as well. Excellent. Gas being such an important element of the energy transition as a transition fuel, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. So you cannot participate to a panel in 2021 and without mentioning COVID-19. So I wanted to sort of just pause on that topic for a second. We've watched carefully the results of Engie Brasil Energia, and the company has proven to be remarkably resilient during the pandemic. Notwithstanding that, will the pandemic affect or has it affected in any way the group plans in Brazil?
Look, I think in general, and there was obviously, as in any countries, I think every country has gone through moments of handling the crisis good and sometimes not as good. And I think everybody went through their learning curve. And I believe Brazil is no exception to that. I'll just highlight the fact that, we feel that the government was supportive to the business during the crisis. And so, for us, obviously, you highlighting the resiliency of EBA. Frankly, we've been in Brazil for 25 years, and we see Engie in Brazil, very, very bright future for years to come. So, in general, quite pleased with the government support to the business during the period of uncertainty. And so, preventing breach of contract, which is obviously really important particularly for foreign investors, right, to make sure that contracts continue to hold, etc. And we felt that from that standpoint, the business continuity was assured, and so no specific concerns on that front. beyond, of course, the impact on the people who have suffered from the sanitary conditions and sometimes in a very tragic manner.
Yeah, thank you for that. One last question before we let you go. Going back to the gas sector, which is obviously a major driver for Engie as a whole, and also again a huge opportunity for Brazil as a country. With the liberalization of the gas market, the gas law, etc., the ongoing, the likely privatization of a number of gas distribution companies, would you ever considering sort of moving downstream in the gas sector? Maybe investing in LDCs, or is that something that it's off the table?
Maybe in investing in what? Sorry, I didn't hear, Vittorio.
Sorry, to invest in the gas distribution sector. You're already in the gas transmission. Would you consider investing in gas distribution in Brazil?
You're putting me on the spot now. So look, I think in general answer, because obviously it's a bit difficult to be too specific, but in general, the way we would like to focus is probably to stay more on the transport sector. But you never know. I'm not. Options continue to be open, but typically from a network standpoint, obviously beyond the incumbent positions in our traditional countries, I think we would probably focus more on the transmission, but obviously options couldn't be considered.
Very good. Voilà. Very diplomatic answer. Catherine, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to have you here with us virtually. Hopefully, next year you'll be able to be with us in person, and consider yourself invited already. But thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Really hope I can be physically with you next time. So very nice to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Very good to see you. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye, everyone. Bye.